gone in search of. Imagine knowing where and when the next killer earthquake will strike. What these experts have uncovered could save thousands of lives.
In under a minute, a large earthquake can wreak more destruction than a hurricane or flood. Even a moment's notice could spell the difference between life and death. But there is no way to predict when the next seismic catastrophe will strike. Or is there? Some people claim that their warnings have been kept under wraps.
I think that people are afraid of panicking people. Who knows how people would react? What would you do? Would you go to school? Would you go to work? Would you keep your kids home? Would you keep your husband or your wife home?
In the last 26 years, I've made more than 400 predictions and hit more than 300 of them.
Earthquakes strike with fatal and devastating force. Recently, the world has watched in horror as over 18,000 people died in India as the result of a calamitous 7.7 earthquake. In Turkey, entire cities were leveled as more than 17,000 people perished beneath the rubble of a 7.4 earthquake. Able to strike at any time and anywhere, the unpredictability of earthquakes leaves us all vulnerable.
People should understand that they are not going to know when earthquakes are going to happen.
David Jackson is the former science director for the Southern California Earthquake Center.
Earthquakes can't be predicted because they're way too complex. They result from a lot of forces that vary from one place to another. We can't measure these forces in detail because earthquakes occur at a depth of 5 to 10 miles below the surface of the Earth.
Like David Jackson, geologist Jim Birkeland once believed that earthquake prediction was impossible until he made a startling observation.
We had the three major tide-raising forces occurring almost simultaneously, lining up with the sun, moon, and earth, nearness of the moon, and nearness of the sun. So it just popped into my head at that point. Perhaps the solid earth is also being pulled out by this gravitational stress. Well, 2 days later, we got a 4.4 quake. And I thought, my, this is simple. What is so tough about predicting quakes?
In 1989, Birkeland made a series of very troubling observations.
Not only do we have the highest tides in 3 years, we have animals doing very, very strange things in the Bay Area. Never before had live beaked whales washed up on the beaches here. So I had called the paper 4 days before the World Series quake and said, it's going to be worse than I thought.
Corner of Jefferson and Divisadero.
The downtown section of Santa Cruz is basically gone.
You can see this building is collapsed.
Right at the end of the cantilever is where the roadway dropped onto the lower deck.
Jim Birkeland's dire prediction was ignored by the scientific community. A massive 7.1 earthquake hit San Francisco, causing billions of dollars in damage. Motorists were trapped beneath collapsed freeways, and lives were lost in the tragedy. One week after predicting the San Francisco earthquake, Birkeland was suspended from his job as county geologist and warned not to make any more predictions.
They called me a clown, a crackpot, an enthusiast, not a scientist. And I says, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing because I believe in it. It's helping people.
Using his method of studying the tides, moon, and gravitational forces, Jim Birkeland claims to have successfully predicted over 300 earthquakes. Professional screenwriter Kathy Gorey is another person with demonstrated abilities to predict the coming of earthquakes. But unlike Jim Birkeland, she is not looking for signals. They come to her, whether she likes it or not.
I get a headache before an earthquake. The headache is centered right in the frontal lobe. That's how I can tell. I don't normally get headaches. I don't have migraines. I'm not someone with a history of headaches, so that's how I noticed this. I would have a headache. It would last for however long it lasted, correlated with the magnitude of the quake. Then after the end of the headache, within usually a few hours, maybe up to 24, 48 hours, there would be an earthquake.
On January 14th, 1994, Gorrie began to experience an excruciating headache that would not subside.
I was complaining about the headache. I was joking because we had a lot of pressure on us to finish a script. We were supposed to turn the script in the next day. I said, oh, this is giving me such a headache. And one of my friends said, maybe, have you ever thought it might be one of your earthquake headaches?
Within hours, Kathy and her friends were jolted out of their beds by the devastating earthquake that leveled parts of Northridge, California, and set portions of the city of Los Angeles on fire. Kathy Gorrie attributes her headache to a mineral called magnetite.
We know that animals behave strangely before a quake. Their navigation systems are off. And it's due to the fact that the magnetite in their brains is sensitive to the electromagnetic waves that are being released. And for a long time, they thought human beings didn't have magnetite in their brains. And about 10 years ago, there was an article in Time magazine showing that, lo and behold, yes, we do. We do have magnetite, all humans have it, and it's centered in the frontal lobe of the brain.
Kathy Gorrie may be living proof that certain people, like animals, can tune into the Earth's subtle changes to forecast an impending earthquake. But the surest way to predict earthquakes may be the most bizarre method of all. You won't believe how this scientist makes his predictions. We'll show you when we come back. Claiming that their abilities to forecast earthquakes could save countless lives. Scientist Zhonghao Shao is among them. After over a decade of research, Shao has refined his methods and claims an astonishing rate of accuracy. His secret is in the clouds.
Every day I spend observing satellite photographs, looking for earthquake clouds that appear suddenly. These clouds are different from weather clouds because they are formed by water vapor that is emitted from the Earth. This vapor condenses into an earthquake cloud, which looks like a very long, thin line, or several parallel radiating lines.
Recently, a series of troubling earthquake clouds began appearing in the skies above the American Northwest. The unusual formations prompted Zhonghao Shao to post an internet warning.
On February 26th of this year, I found a sign that there would be an earthquake of magnitude greater than 5 in the Seattle area.
Zhonghao Shao was right. A mere 40 hours after his startling prediction, Seattle, Washington was rocked by a magnitude 6.8 earthquake. When the dust settled, many were amazed that Zhonghao Shao had been able to predict a massive earthquake for an area of the United States that hadn't experienced one in almost 40 years. The scientist always registers his predictions with the United States Geological Survey. Their own records indicate that Zhonghao Shao has been right almost 30% of the time. Yet they are still unwilling to admit that earthquake prediction is possible.
Then on the 20th of
Even
March,
if authorities could predict earthquakes, some still wonder if they would release their information.
I think that people are afraid of panicking people. You don't want to have War of the Worlds or some kind of crazy thing happening.
I think seismologists are scared of predicting earthquakes because of the huge responsibility they would have to bear.
3 people with nothing in common but an uncanny ability to defy the critics who still insist that earthquake prediction is a mere matter of coincidence.
Every time there seems to be a correlation, the critics come out and say, coincidence, but when it keeps happening time after time over 26 years, it's more than coincidence.
Are we truly helpless in the face of this terrifying power? Or can the emerging science of earthquake prediction provide warning and defense against the next cataclysm? The truth remains elusive. Until we have answers, our very survival depends on chance readiness, and a future as uncertain as the ground beneath our feet.
Thanks for watching In Search Of. I'm Mitch Pileggi. Good night.
Oh.